to our next chat about the books that we're currently reading and enjoying. You may notice that Olivia's not with us today, and some of you may know that she took a tumble down the stairs here earlier in the week, so she's not able to be with us today. She is going to, however, write a little bit about the book she's currently reading, which I believe is called Leave the World Behind. So Duncan, what are you going to talk to us about today?
Right, well, I'm going to talk to everyone about a book that I read a couple of weeks back called American Dirt. Now, this is a book which attracted me purely because of the title. I thought, what's that about? And it was only having read it I discovered how much controversy it stirred up. Not so much on this side of the Atlantic, but certainly in the United States. The premise of the book, it's a work of fiction, but it follows a mother and 8-year-old son who, and his father, her husband, was a journalist in Mexico, looking into the machinations of the cartels. Well, he gets a few warnings which he doesn't heed, and the book starts with his end, and then it follows their journey of escape from the cartels, heading, of course, to what's described as El Norte, or the United States. And a fascinating book. It is a work of fiction, and I think that's where a lot of the criticism that was levied at it perhaps misses out, because the lady's name is Janine Cummings, not a writer I'd ever come across before, though she has written. This isn't her first novel. And a lot of the criticism levied at her was all to do with what does a so-called privileged white lady know about the plight of Mexican migrantes or migrants. And I think, having read an awful lot of venomous criticism of her online, I think a lot of people are missing the point. It is a work of fiction.
I actually started this book on your recommendation, actually, and I didn't finish it. I don't know whether I just wasn't in the right headspace to read it. I found the opening chapter, I mean, I know it's not supposed to be full of fun and laughter, but I just found it very heavy going. Not so much the reading of it, but just the subject matter.
Right. I mean that's interesting. It can be quite a traumatic book to read.
The first chapter, particularly, is just whoa.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it gets a lot more traumatic later, to be honest. It is really, in a way, a bit of an odyssey. There aren't huge twists along the way. You've got a pretty good idea as they find their way north what sort of horrors, if you like, they are going to encounter, and they certainly do. The characters they meet aren't desperately deep, interesting characters, but then would they be anyway? It's not really a character study. Her character is very interesting, as is the boy. Again, in a similar way to the way the beekeeper of Aleppo documents the journey from Syria to, in this case, United Kingdom. It certainly opens one's eyes to what these people are likely to go through, or do go through, and why, if you like, they make this perilous journey to the United States.
Okay.
These people were exploited at every corner, and she, the wife, was under no illusions at all that was going to happen. They do meet up with two young girls, sisters in fact, who are apparently stunningly beautiful, and the wife is shocked by this because she knows full well what sort of things this is going to lead to along their journey. They end up journeying with about 3 or 4 other people as well, and yes, it's some unpleasant things happen, but there's never any gratuitous detail, and that's what's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
You know what's gone on, but they don't rub it in, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
But a book I enjoyed.
Did you find it uplifting? Did you feel good when you'd finished it? Do you find it very depressing and a bit...
No, not really. I didn't find it depressing at all. I definitely didn't find it uplifting, though. I suppose the one thing you could say is it was quite uplifting with regards to the human soul, if you like, that she had and her determination. It's a very interesting study also in a mother's determination to do the best for her son. Throughout the book, and I presume the time scale of the book is probably only a couple of weeks, really, between when they start their journey and when they finish their journey.
And she had a strange relationship, didn't she, with the what I can only describe as one of the main baddies in the book. Did she not have some strange past with him?
She does.
I found that a bit odd.
Well, it's possibly a bit unnecessary, but quite interesting. She has a bookshop in Acapulco before the start of her sort of escape, if you like, from the cartels. And as it happens, purely by chance, one of the cartel big wigs visits her bookshop regularly, and she gets to know him very well, and in other circumstances probably would have had a relationship with him. And it's interesting that this is written into the story, because along the way, when he sends his sort of generals and sort of lieutenants after her to catch her at the end of all of this, she has some strange hope that because they had this sort of almost romantic understanding between them, that he would let it go, and he most certainly doesn't.
I didn't get that far.
No, so it perhaps is written into the story to demonstrate the utter ruthlessness of these individuals behind these cartels. So that was quite interesting.
Okay.
Now, how true any of this is, I really have no idea at all. There, obviously many films that we've seen on the television that, again, works of fiction, but you feel represent fairly well how the whole migrant thing works. I think both the films Sicario and Sicario 2 good films to watch, especially Sicario 2. Sicario 1's a little bit far-fetched with Emily Blunt, I think it is. But just the absolute nastiness of it all. So, no, definitely worth a read. I don't think in this country we have such a sort of vociferous polarization with regards to Mexican migration to the United States. Now, whether this is really comparable to what we're seeing across the channel, I'm not really sure. I have no idea really what the public feel about that. I think one of the big differences, of course, is I think the huge opposition that the public have in this country to migration across the channel is mainly to do with economics. There is this idea, who knows whether it's true or not, that these people are a huge burden on society. Now, I don't think that's such an issue in the United States. I think it's more a cultural thing in the United States with regards to the Mexican individuals crossing the border, but not sure. But definitely worth a read. American Dirt. Tell us about your book.
My book is by Patrick McGrath, and it's called Last Days in Cleaver Square. I saw this book in a bookshop and was drawn to it rather shallowly by the cover, which is lovely, but also by the fact that it was by Patrick McGrath, and I have read a few books of his before. There's always an element of sort of supernatural a little bit, mental illness, that sort of thing. He's written a book called Asylum, Dr. Haggard's Disease, which is actually quite good, which I've read. Apparently he was brought up in the grounds of Broadmoor Hospital. Not quite sure why, but maybe that's where that stems from. But this is a book about a chap called, I can't remember what he's called, Francis McNulty. And he's 80 years of age, and he's living in this house in Cleaver Square, which is in Kennington in South London. And it was his boyhood home. He wasn't born there, but he went there as a young boy with his sister and his parents, and it's the house he grew up in. The book's set in 1975 when he was 80 years old, but in his earlier life he went to fight in the Spanish Civil War and ended up driving an ambulance, and he met an American doctor there who sort of features quite prominently in the book. He's approached by a journalist from the Manchester Guardian because he's a poet, and this chap knocks on his door and says he'd like to speak to him about his poetry, which was written during the Spanish Civil War. And the reason he's doing that is because General Franco is sort of nearing the end of his days over in Spain, and this chap is sort of nearing the end of his days. He's got the early signs of dementia. It's written in the first person, so it's actually quite charming. He's quite an endearing character, quite funny a lot of the time, a bit sad as well in parts, but he's sort of harbouring this guilt to do with this American doctor. I won't give too much away, but he feels that he's committed this major act of betrayal, and he has actually. And it's sort of his dealings with that and how he doesn't really want to speak to the journalist because he's never told anybody what happened there. And this guy sort of draws him out, and they become very friendly. So yes, it's sort of an inner turmoil, and this poor old chap coming to the end of his days and sort of going back over his life and trying to work things out and feel better about this terrible thing that he did. And the way he does this is he lives with his middle-aged daughter, who's a civil servant, and she's been there all his life looking after him, and suddenly she's engaged to a civil servant that she works with, who works for the Foreign Office, I think, and is based in Madrid. And they ask him, actually, strangely, to go on their honeymoon and go back to Spain, which he's very reluctant to do, but in the end he decides that he will.
No, he's not Spanish, is he?
No. So yes, he decides that he will go on this honeymoon back to Madrid to sort of get closure on this whole episode, really, and to come to terms with what he did and this terrible act of betrayal. There's a recurring theme in the book. General Franco himself often appears in his bedroom and in his garden, or he thinks, and it can't be his ghost because he's still alive, but he has these visions, if you like, of General Franco, which are very strange. A lot of the time it's very clear and he's just sitting there at the end of his bed, and sometimes it's just an image that he has at the bottom of his garden, and his housekeeper actually is I can't remember her, Dolores, her name is Dolores, and he brought her back from Spain. He found her under some rubble when he was driving his ambulance, and he actually brought her back, and she's his housekeeper now, and she goes back to Spain with him at the end. So yeah, it's a strange book. Patrick McGraw's books can be a little bit strange, but it's a lovely story and it's beautifully written. And as I say, because it's in the first person and it's narrated by this man, he is quite a character. And it's a lovely book. It's, as I say, it's a strange book. But yeah, I would recommend it, actually, and it's very easy to read. Very easy.
And many characters in the book?
No,
itself?
Very few. There's Francis himself, his daughter. The daughter's fiancé figures a little bit later in the book because of the whole Spanish connection. And the housekeeper, really, and the journalist that comes.
Right.
And that's pretty much it.
Well, those are our two books, American Dirt and
Last Days in Cleaver Square.
Great. And I don't know that one, but I would thoroughly recommend this. But it is a work of fiction.
Yeah, and you need to be in the right headset to read that, I think, because it is a little bit on the heavy-going subject-wise, I think.
I didn't find that.
Did you?